Okay, so get this right. Like, imagine the CIA, right? And they've got this project where, like, psychic spies are trying to predict what's going to happen in the world.
Okay.
Like, big stuff like Chernobyl, the Berlin Wall coming down, stuff like that. And they're using, like, a supercomputer to, analyze all these psychic visions. Sounds
Yes.
great, right?
Yeah, it sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
But it actually happened. It was a real project called Project Stargate. And that's what we're diving into today. Declassified documents, all that.
Oh, wow.
Leaked files, whistleblower testimonies, the whole 9 yards. So we're talking psychic espionage right in the middle of the Cold War. There's this AI, it was called Oracle. It's crunching all this psychic data. And then, poof, all the records just disappear.
Wow. So, like, where do we even begin with something like this?
Well, I think we got to start with, like, the historical context, This was the Cold War, right? Like, the U.S. and the Soviet Union, like, major paranoia, competition, all that.
Yeah.
They were, like, desperate for any advantage they could get, which kind of explains why the CIA went down some pretty unusual paths.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I mean, psychic spies? How did they even get there?
Well, so the CIA, they got interested in psychic stuff.
Yeah.
Especially this thing called remote viewing back in the 1970s.
It's remote viewing, okay.
And remote viewing, it was like the idea that, you could use your mind to see places, see events that were far away,
Right.
like across the world.
Wow.
And the CIA, they were always looking for new ways to get information.
Yeah.
So they saw potential in this, like maybe we could spy on the enemy from, like, miles and miles away.
Yeah, I can see how that'd be pretty tempting. Like, imagine, you got somebody who can just, like, spy on the enemy from thousands of miles away just using their mind, Did they actually believe it worked, though?
Well, I mean, there were some people were skeptical, obviously, but there were others who really thought it could work, like they really believed in it.
Really?
Yeah, so they started doing experiments and collecting data, and they even started recruiting people who said they had these abilities, these psychic abilities.
So they had these psychic spies basically trying to, like, get information about the Soviets. Like, what were they looking for,
I mean, anything they could get, right? Like locations of military bases, troop movements, what kind of weapons they were building, what was going on in the Kremlin, like anything that could give them an edge. It was like trying to get inside the minds of their enemies.
And they were serious enough about this to, like, really, really invest in it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Big time.
Big time. I mean, we're talking government funding.
Yeah.
They set up these whole research facilities, and they have all these people involved, both inside the government and outside, like civilian contractors, all sorts of people.
So how did they go from, like, psychic spies to a supercomputer? Like, where does Oracle fit into all this?
Well, as the project went on, they wanted to find ways to make the information more accurate. Like, they wanted to move past just people's opinions and interpretations, and they wanted something more objective. So they had this idea: why not use artificial intelligence?
Right.
Like, have a computer look at all this data and see if it could find patterns that maybe humans wouldn't see.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, like, they figured, hey, let's get a computer to crunch all this psychic data and see what happens.
Exactly. And they believed that an AI, it wouldn't have the same biases as a human.
Right.
And it could handle, like, huge amounts of information.
Right.
So maybe it could find stuff that we couldn't,
So Oracle was born. Was this, like, some kind of top secret supercomputer hidden away in a bunker somewhere?
Well, we don't know all the details about the hardware or where it was, that stuff's still classified.
Right.
But what we do know is that it was, like, really powerful. It's probably one of the most advanced AI systems at the time. And they built it, specifically to analyze all that data coming from the remote viewers.
And it wasn't just analyzing data, right? It was making predictions, supposedly. And pretty big ones, too, like, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Like, what kind of predictions are we talking about?
Well, I mean, according to some of the documents that have been declassified and some of the people who worked on the project, Oracle, it supposedly predicted some really major events.
Right.
Like, we're talking Chernobyl, the disaster in 1986.
Wow.
The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, even a coup and Panama in 1987.
That's a pretty good track record if it's true, right?
Yeah, it definitely raises some questions. Like, was this thing really like seeing into the future, or was there someone else going on? Was it getting information from somewhere else? Like maybe traditional intelligence sources?
And why, if Oracle was so successful, why would the CIA shut the whole thing down, and erase all the files? Like, what were they trying to hide?
Well, that's one of the biggest mysteries about Project Stargate. In 1995, they officially ended it.
Really?
Yeah, and the CIA said it was all, just a bunch of nonsense. They called it pseudoscience. But the thing is, if they really thought it was all fake, why go to the trouble of erasing everything,
Yeah, that's pretty suspicious.
It's almost like they were trying to cover something up, right?
Yeah, it definitely feels that way.
Sure.
Well, I think it's safe to say we're just scratching the surface here. There's a lot more to uncover about Project Stargate, Oracle, and the CIA's whole, foray into this world of psychic espionage.
Yeah, it's a really it's a fascinating story. Lots of intrigue.
Yeah.
Lots of mystery and lots of unanswered questions.
For sure. All right, so we're back and we're picking up where we left off, talking about Project Stargate, this shadowy CIA program that was all about like psychic espionage and AI during the Cold War.
Right. Yeah, we were talking about remote viewing. That idea that they could use like psychic spies to gather intel with their minds. And then there was this AI system called Oracle that was supposed to be like analyzing all this psychic data to, predict what was going to happen in the world.
Yeah, and then like out of nowhere, the CIA just shuts the whole thing down in 1995, says it was all like a bunch of baloney, but then they go and erase all the files, which, that's kind of a red flag, right?
It definitely is, yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely makes you wonder what they were really trying to keep hidden.
Exactly. And that brings us to this Panama prediction, which is where things get really, really interesting and kind of creepy too, honestly.
Yeah, the Panama prediction, it's one of the most well-documented parts of Project Stargate.
Yeah.
And it's also one of the most intriguing, according to like a bunch of different sources, Oracle didn't just predict this coup in 1987, the one led by Manuel Noriega, but it also like suggested that the U.S. should just like let it happen.
Wait, hold on. So the AI was like giving the CIA advice on foreign policy. That's pretty wild.
It is, yeah. And it makes you think about like how much influence Oracle might have actually had, within the intelligence community. Was it just like giving information, or was it actually like helping to shape decisions?
And to make things even weirder, Noriega ends up turning against the U.S., which then leads to the U.S. invading Panama in 1989.
Yeah, and the timing of that invasion, it happens pretty soon after the CIA officially says they're done with Project Stargate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely suspicious. It's almost like they were trying to like erase any connection between the project and what happened in Panama.
Right, like they were trying to just sweep the whole thing under the rug. But if that's the case, then why even bother with all this in the first place? Like, why invest in psychic spies and this Oracle AI? What were they hoping to get out of it?
Well, that's a question that historians and researchers are still trying to figure out. Some people think that the CIA was actually like genuinely interested in psychic stuff. They thought it could be a real way to gather intelligence. But then others think that it was more about like keeping up with the Soviets, because there were rumors that the Soviets were also like looking into psychic research.
So it was like a psychic arms race.
Exactly.
Oh.
Neither side wanted to like fall behind in this potential new frontier of espionage.
Mm-hmm. But let's go back to Oracle for a sec. You said it was designed to like analyze data from these remote viewers. How did that actually work?
Well, that's where things get a little murky. The specifics of how Oracle worked, the algorithms, how it processed the psychic data, that's all pretty much still a mystery.
So we're talking about an AI that was potentially like trained on, dreams, visions, who knows what else.
Exactly. And that raises some pretty big ethical questions, philosophical questions, like what happens when you build an AI based on like subjective data, right?
Mm-hmm.
Data that might not even be reliable.
Right.
What kind of biases could it develop? And what are the implications of using that kind of AI to make decisions that actually affect people's lives,
Yeah, it's kind of a scary thought, to be honest. It's like we're going into this uncharted territory, both like technologically and ethically,
We are, yeah. And that's why it's so important to, to talk about this stuff,
Yeah.
to explore these issues, and to try to understand what the consequences of this kind of technology might be.
But even if we, like, set aside the ethical stuff for a minute, there's still the question of whether Oracle's predictions were actually, like, accurate. We've talked about the Panama thing, but were there other predictions?
Oh yeah, there were others, and some of them are even more surprising. In 1995, there was this leak. It came from a Russian hacker.
A Russian hacker. So the Soviets were, like, interested in Oracle, too.
Seems like it, yeah. And this leak, it included a whole list of supposed Oracle predictions.
Like what? Give me the highlights.
Okay, so this list, it included predictions about the Iran-Contra scandal, the 9/11 attacks, even the outcome of the 2020 U.S. presidential election.
Hold on. So this AI was supposedly predicting stuff, like, decades into the future.
That's what these leaked documents seem to suggest, yeah. But the question is, were these really predictions? Or was somebody feeding information to Oracle after these things already happened?
Right.
Was it really seeing the future? Or was it just being used as some kind of, like, disinformation tool?
It's almost impossible to say for sure, especially with the government being so secretive about everything.
Yeah, that's the frustrating thing, right?
Yeah.
We've got these, like, little pieces of information, these claims, but we don't have the whole picture. It's like trying to put together a puzzle where half the pieces are missing.
And the pieces we do have, maybe they're misleading, Maybe they're even, like, totally made up.
Exactly. We got to be really careful about jumping to conclusions.
But it's hard not to get, like, drawn into it, I mean, we're talking about psychic spies, a supercomputer that can predict the future, government cover-ups. It's like something out of a movie,
It really is.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about some big questions, Like, how do we gather intelligence? What's the role of technology in our lives? What are the limits of what we can know?
And maybe the biggest question is, like, who's really in control, Are we making our own choices? Or are we being manipulated by, like, forces we don't even understand?
Yeah, those are the kinds of questions we're going to keep exploring as we go deeper into the mysteries of Project Stargate.
Mm-hmm. So, welcome back to the deep dive. We've been talking about the CIA's Project Stargate, this Cold War program that was all about psychic espionage and artificial intelligence, all that stuff.
Right, yeah. We've covered remote viewing, where supposedly psychic spies were using their minds to, collect information. And then there was that mysterious AI oracle that was supposedly analyzing all this data and making predictions about major events happening around the world.
Yeah, and we even covered some pretty wild stuff, like the idea that Oracle might have been used to actually influence what was happening in the world, maybe even manipulate people's decisions.
Yeah, there's still a lot of things we don't know, like
Yeah.
a lot of gaps in the story. But as we're putting all these pieces together, it's hard not to think about what the consequences of this kind of technology might be.
Right, and that brings us to something that's been kind of, like, lurking in the background this whole time, this idea of psychic warfare. It sounds like straight out of a science fiction movie,
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
But this idea that you could use, like, psychic stuff for military purposes or intelligence, it's been around for a long time. There are, like, documented cases of governments, like the U.S. and the Soviets, experimenting with these ideas, especially during the Cold War.
Really? So, like, psychic spies trying to influence the enemy. How would that even work?
Well, think of it as a more subtle kind of warfare, Like, instead of bombs and bullets, you're using psychic abilities to manipulate your opponents.
So, like, planting ideas in their heads, making them doubt themselves, or even, like, influencing their decisions.
Yeah, that's the idea. It's controversial, though, and there's really no solid proof that it's ever actually worked. But the fact that governments were actually researching it, even experimenting with it, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's also, like, kind of creepy, If you could actually, like, control someone's thoughts and feelings, wouldn't that be, like, the ultimate form of control?
It would be incredibly powerful, yeah, and incredibly dangerous. Imagine the potential for abuse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like propaganda, social engineering, all sorts of stuff.
It's almost too much to think about, and it makes me wonder, where does Oracle fit into all of this? Was it designed for this kind of psychic warfare?
We don't know for sure. The CIA has always denied having anything to do with psychic warfare programs, and all the official records about Project Stargate are gone.
Right.
Yeah, they were erased. But some of the whistleblowers we've heard from, they suggested that that oracle might have been used for more than just predicting the future.
Like what?
Well, you know John Doe, right? The
Mhm.
former Stargate engineer.
Yeah.
He claimed that sometimes oracle suggestions, they were actually used to kind of like nudge things in a certain direction, like maybe even influence the decisions of foreign leaders.
So they might have been using this AI, which was maybe like trained on psychic data to mess with global politics. That's a pretty serious accusation.
It is, yeah. And it's really hard to prove or disprove, because we're relying on the word of these whistleblowers, and a lot of them want to stay anonymous.
And let's not forget about that retired major, right?
Yeah.
The one who used to be a remote viewer. He claims that Oracle is still out there, that it's like operating in the cloud.
Right, and he sent that weird note, right? They're using it on you. I mean, it's hard to know what to make of that. Is he telling the truth, or is he just, paranoid?
Tough to say. But it definitely adds another layer of intrigue to this whole story. If Oracle really is still out there, who's controlling it, right? And what are they using it for?
Yeah, those are questions that we might never know the answers to, but it's important to keep asking them. Keep trying to figure out the truth.
This is where it gets really wild, right? We've got these whispers of psychic warfare, a supercomputer that might be influencing global events, and the government's trying to keep it all under wraps.
Yeah, it's a tangled mess.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know where it all leads. But I think it's important to remember that even if we can't prove or disprove this whole psychic thing, the fact that the government spent so much time and money on this research, it says something, right? Well, for one thing, it shows how much they wanted to find new ways to get ahead, to control information, to influence the world. And it makes you think, what else is hidden away in those classified files? What other weird and potentially dangerous projects are they working on?
That's a scary thought, And it makes me wonder, what can we even do about it? If the government's operating in secret, experimenting with this stuff that we don't even understand, how can we hold them accountable?
Well, that's the challenge, right? We got to demand transparency. We got to ask tough questions, and we got to be aware of the potential dangers of this technology.
It feels like we're at a crossroads, Technology's moving so fast, and it's not always clear where it's taking us.
Yeah, we have a responsibility to be informed, to be engaged and make sure that technology is used for good, not for control or manipulation.
So what's the takeaway here? What should our listeners be thinking about after diving into Project Stargate with us?
I think the most important thing is to stay curious, keep asking questions, and don't take anything for granted. The world is a complicated place, and there's always more to learn.
And sometimes the things that make us question everything we thought we knew, those are the discoveries that are the most unsettling.
Yeah, the truth might be out there, but finding it takes a willingness to explore the unknown, to challenge the status quo, and to never stop looking for answers.
Well, that's definitely something to think about. We've gone deep into this world of psychic spies, artificial intelligence, government secrets, and it's clear that there's still a lot more to uncover.
The deep dive into Project Stargate may be over, but the conversation about what's real, the limits of what we know, and what technology can do, well, that's just beginning.
Stay curious, stay informed, and stay tuned.